The school auditorium was buzzing with excitement that morning. Parents, students, and teachers filled the room, chatting quietly and finding their seats. The sun poured through the tall windows, lighting up the polished wooden floors and the grand piano that sat on the stage. It was the kind of piano that made people stop and look, the kind that seemed to have a story of its own. Everyone seemed eager to see what would happen during the school's open day, but no one could have guessed what would unfold. Among the students, there was a group who liked to joke around. They laughed loudly at everything, teasing one another in a friendly way, though sometimes their words could sting without them realizing it. One of the students, a girl known for her confidence and teasing nature, noticed a man quietly walking along the edge of the room. He was the school custodian, an older man who always seemed to be invisible. No one really paid attention to him, and he moved quietly, making sure the floors were clean and the auditorium was ready. His clothes were simple, and he carried a calm, quiet air that made him easy to overlook. The girl spotted him near the piano. She had a playful, mischievous idea and could not resist making a joke. With a bright smile and a twinkle in her eye, she called out, "Play, and I will marry you." Her laugh rang through the room, and some students giggled while others stared in surprise. It was a bold, silly comment, and for a moment it seemed like everyone was just laughing along, thinking it was harmless fun. The custodian paused. His hands were folded in front of him, and he looked up slowly. There was no sign of offense or embarrassment on his face. He simply walked closer to the piano, and a quiet hush seemed to fall over the room. The laughter faded. People were curious, but they did not expect much. After all, why would a custodian know how to play such a grand instrument? The girl giggled nervously, still expecting him to decline or perhaps stumble over the keys. She had no idea that this man had a past that few knew about. She leaned on a nearby chair, smirking, ready for a funny moment. Teachers whispered to each other, glancing at the man, and students whispered bets on whether he could play at all. The room was filled with a mix of anticipation and doubt, the kind of tension that comes when everyone expects something ordinary but wonders if the unexpected might happen. The custodian sat down on the piano bench, his posture relaxed but confident. His hands rested lightly on the keys, and for a moment, there was silence. The girl, still smirking, leaned forward, waiting for him to make a mistake, expecting maybe a few awkward notes. But then, as his fingers moved across the keys, the sound began to fill the room. It was soft at first, almost cautious, but beautiful in a way that made people stop breathing for a second. The notes flowed smoothly, perfectly, as if the piano had been waiting for him all along. The students' eyes widened. The girl who had laughed so boldly could not hide her surprise. Her smile froze, and the room fell into stunned silence. Teachers leaned forward, trying to comprehend what they were hearing. It was not just good playing, it was remarkable. The custodian's hands moved with a skill that only came from years of practice and love for music. The melody was gentle but strong, full of emotion and story. As he continued to play, the room transformed. What had started as a light-hearted joke turned into a moment of awe. The people who had underestimated him now saw him in a completely new light. The custodian played pieces that were familiar yet filled with his own touch, adding depth and feeling that made the music seem alive. Some students whispered to each other, their voices barely audible, saying things like, "I had no idea he could do that," and "This is amazing." The girl who had spoken the words that started it all felt a mixture of embarrassment and admiration. She realized how wrong she had been to assume anything about him. The custodian did not look up or acknowledge the murmurs. He simply played, focused entirely on the music. The notes carried through the room, reaching every corner and drawing in every listener. Parents leaned forward in their seats, some with tears in their eyes, moved by the beauty and emotion of what they were hearing. The girl's laughter from moments ago seemed distant now, replaced by awe and a growing respect she could not hide. After a few minutes, the custodian's music slowed, the last note lingering in the air like a soft echo. For a moment, the room remained completely silent, as if no one could believe what had just happened. Then, slowly, applause began to rise. It started with a few claps, then grew louder, until the entire auditorium was filled with cheering, clapping, and shouting praise. The girl joined in, her face flushed but her eyes full of newfound respect. She realized that what she had thought was a joke had led to a revelation she would never forget. Teachers came forward to shake his hand, thanking him for sharing his talent and for reminding everyone that appearances can be deceiving. Students crowded around, asking questions and complimenting his skill. The custodian smiled gently, humble in the face of so much attention. He had never sought recognition. He played for the love of music. Yet, in this moment, the world saw him as he truly was. The girl approached him cautiously, her voice quieter now, filled with sincerity. She said, I didn't expect that. I'm sorry for laughing." The custodian nodded, his eyes kind. "It's all right," he said softly. "Music doesn't belong to anyone, but it's meant to be shared." His words carried warmth and wisdom, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who heard them. From that day on, the custodian was no longer invisible. He was seen and respected for the talent and heart he had carried quietly all those years. And for the girl, the lesson was unforgettable. A simple joke had led to a moment that changed her understanding of people, talent, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. The music had spoken for him, and it had spoken the truth. After that unforgettable moment in the auditorium, life at the school slowly returned to normal, but things were different now. The custodian, who had always been quiet and unnoticed, began to attract curious glances and whispers wherever he went. Students who had once ignored him now looked at him with new eyes. Teachers who barely spoke to him before now nodded warmly and sometimes stopped to chat. Yet the custodian moved through his days with the same calm and gentle manner, never letting the attention change him. The girl who had made the joke could not stop thinking about what had happened. She felt a mix of embarrassment, admiration, and curiosity. She had laughed without thinking, assuming he was just a quiet man who had nothing to do with the grand piano. Now she realized how little she had known about him. She decided she wanted to understand him better, to see the person behind the uniform and the quiet demeanor. It started with small interactions. She would pass by him in the hall and ask simple questions about his day or the work he was doing. At first, he responded with short, polite answers, never revealing too much. But over time, he began to open up, telling small stories about his past, about the places he had lived, and about the music that had always been a part of his life. Each story revealed a new layer of his character, and the girl found herself fascinated. She realized that this man, who everyone had overlooked, had lived a life full of experiences, struggles, and talents that few could imagine. The students around her began to notice her change as well. She was no longer the confident, teasing girl who made jokes without thinking. She had become thoughtful and respectful, eager to learn from someone she had once underestimated. Some of her friends were confused, wondering why she spent so much time talking to the custodian. But she didn't care. She knew she was witnessing something rare and important. She was learning lessons that could not be taught in a classroom. The custodian began to share more about his music. He told her about the piano lessons he had taken as a child, the hours he had spent practicing, and the dreams he had once held. He explained how life had forced him to take a different path, how circumstances beyond his control had led him to work as a custodian instead of performing on stages. His voice was calm, but the girl could feel the passion and the love he had for music in every word. She realized that his life had been full of challenges, yet he had never stopped pursuing what he loved, even quietly, in the background. One day, the girl found herself alone with the custodian near the piano. She hesitated for a moment, then asked if he could play again. He smiled gently and sat down, his fingers finding the keys as if no time had passed since the last performance. The music that flowed this time was even more beautiful, filled with emotion and depth. It spoke of patience, resilience, and quiet strength. The girl closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. She felt a deep respect for the custodian, and for the first time, she understood the power of talent, dedication, and humility. Word of his talent began to spread throughout the school. Teachers who had once doubted him started inviting him to play during special events. Students asked him to demonstrate techniques and share his knowledge. The auditorium, which had seemed so ordinary before, now felt alive whenever he played. It became a place where music, talent, and stories could come together, and where the line between roles and appearances no longer mattered. The girl continued to spend time with him, learning not only about music but also about life. He taught her that true talent is often hidden, and that respect is earned through understanding, not assumptions. She began to notice other students who were overlooked, and she started treating them with the same respect she had learned from the custodian. The lessons went beyond music. They became lessons in empathy, humility, and human connection. One afternoon, as they sat by the piano, the girl asked about his childhood and the moments that had shaped him. He spoke of quiet victories, small successes, and the people who had believed in him when no one else did. He spoke of sacrifices, of working long hours while still finding time to practice, and of the moments when music had been his only companion. The girl listened intently, realizing that every note he played carried a story of perseverance and courage. She felt a growing admiration and a sense of responsibility to share his story with others. As the weeks passed, the custodian became more than just a figure in the background. He became a mentor, a source of inspiration, and a symbol of resilience. The girl who had once laughed at him now became his advocate, encouraging others to listen, learn, and appreciate his talent. She helped organize small performances and encourage students to attend, creating a bridge between the custodian and the wider school community. Through these efforts, the bond between them grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared passion. The girl began to reflect on her own life and the assumptions she had made about people. She realized how easy it was to judge others based on appearances, and how powerful it could be to take the time to truly understand someone. Her friendship with the custodian became a turning point, shaping her perspective and guiding her actions. She started to notice the quiet heroes around her, people who worked diligently and carried hidden talents, and she treated them with the respect they deserved. One day, during a quiet moment after school, the custodian shared a secret with her. He had kept a small notebook with music compositions he had written over the years, pieces that had never been performed. The girl felt honored to see them, and she realized the depth of his dedication and creativity. She promised to help him share his music with others, to give life to the work he had kept hidden for so long. This promise became a shared mission, a way for both of them to grow and impact the school community. The custodian's story began to inspire others as well. Teachers used it as an example of resilience and humility, while students learned that talent and wisdom are not always visible at first glance. The girl found herself speaking to younger students, sharing what she had learned, and encouraging them to look beyond the surface. The school community began to change, slowly embracing the idea that everyone has a story worth knowing and a talent worth respecting. Through these experiences, the girl grew in understanding, compassion, and maturity. She realized that a single moment of laughter could lead to a lifetime of learning if one was willing to listen and reflect. The custodian, meanwhile, continued to move through life quietly, letting his music speak for him, but now with an audience that truly appreciated the depth of his talent. Together, they created a space where music, respect, and human connection intertwined, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed it. In the end, Part 2 of the story shows the transformation that comes from curiosity, respect, and openness. The girl learned to see beyond appearances, the custodian found recognition and connection, and the school community discovered the power of hidden talents. The lessons of patience, humility, and understanding continued to ripple outward, shaping the lives of students and teachers alike, and setting the stage for the next part of their shared journey. Weeks passed after the custodian's first performance, and the excitement about him did not fade. If anything, it grew. Students began to stop by the auditorium more often, hoping to hear him play. Teachers encouraged him to perform during school events, and even parents requested to see him at small gatherings. Yet, the custodian remained humble, always saying that he played for the joy of music and the love of the piano. He never sought attention or praise, but his talent and sincerity drew people in naturally. One afternoon, the girl who had once made the joke arrived at school earlier than usual. She had heard that the custodian was going to practice some of his original compositions in the auditorium, and she was curious to hear them. When she arrived, the custodian was already there, sitting quietly at the piano, his fingers hovering above the keys. He looked up at her and nodded gently, a small smile crossing his face. The girl returned the smile and quietly took a seat in the back, not wanting to disturb him. She could feel the excitement building, as if something extraordinary was about to happen. The custodian began to play, and the sound immediately filled the room. But this time it was different. The music was not just beautiful. It was full of emotion, telling a story without words. Each note seemed to carry a piece of his life, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the dreams he had held onto even when life had been difficult. The girl closed her eyes and listened, feeling the music touch her in a way she had never experienced before. It was more than skill. It was pure expression, a window into the soul of the person who had created it. As he played, students began to trickle in, drawn by the sound. Some stood near the back, peeking through the doors, while others quietly sat on the floor to listen. Teachers arrived as well, their faces showing awe and admiration. No one spoke. Everyone was captivated by the music. The girl felt a lump in her throat, realizing that this man, who had been overlooked for so long, was now holding the attention of everyone around him with something as simple and profound as a piano. When he finished, there was a pause, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Then the applause began slowly, soft at first, then growing louder until it filled every corner of the auditorium. People cheered, some clapping repeatedly, others whistling or calling out words of praise. The custodian looked up, calm but visibly moved, acknowledging the applause with a humble nod. The girl felt a mix of pride and awe. She had been there from the beginning, and now she could see how much of an impact he had on everyone around him. After the performance, the custodian stood and walked toward the girl. He handed her a small sheet of music he had been working on. She looked at it in surprise, recognizing it as one of his original compositions. "I thought you might like to see it," he said softly. She nodded, holding the sheet carefully as if it were a treasure. She could feel the dedication and emotion poured into every note, and it gave her a deeper understanding of the man she had once underestimated. The girl decided to share the experience with her friends, encouraging them to come to the auditorium and listen. Some were skeptical at first, remembering the quiet custodian who had always gone unnoticed. But when they heard him play, they were transformed. They saw the skill, the passion, and the heart behind every note. They realized that talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places, and that judging someone by appearances alone is never fair. Word spread quickly throughout the school. Students who had once ignored the custodian now greeted him warmly in the halls. Teachers sought his advice on music, and even some parents asked if he could play at family events or small school functions. The auditorium, which had once been a simple room for gatherings, became a place where stories, emotions, and lessons were shared through music. The custodian had unknowingly created a bridge between people, connecting them with something deeper than words. The girl found herself reflecting on how much she had learned. She remembered the laughter, the mistake of underestimating him, and the incredible moment when she realized the truth. She had grown in ways she had never expected, learning about respect, patience, and understanding. The custodian had not only shared his music but had also taught her a valuable lesson about human nature and the importance of looking beyond the surface. One day, the custodian invited her to help him prepare for a small school performance. He wanted to play a piece that he had composed but had never shared publicly. She eagerly agreed, feeling honored to be part of this special moment. They spent hours practicing, carefully adjusting the notes, discussing the flow of the music, and preparing for the emotions it would convey. The girl learned not only about the technical aspects of music but also about how it could express feelings and tell stories that words could not. The day of the performance arrived, and the auditorium was filled with anticipation. Students, teachers, and parents gathered, eager to hear what the custodian had prepared. The girl watched from the side, her heart beating with excitement and pride. She had been part of this journey from the beginning, and now she could see how far he had come, how much his music had touched people, and how much respect he had earned. The custodian began to play, and the room was immediately filled with a rich, emotional sound. The music was powerful yet gentle, moving the audience in ways that surprised even him. People leaned forward, some with tears in their eyes, feeling the depth of every note. The girl stood quietly, watching, feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude. She knew that this moment would stay with her forever, a reminder of how unexpected beauty and talent can change lives. As the final note faded, the auditorium erupted in applause. People cheered, clapped, and called out words of admiration. The custodian stood, humbled by the response, acknowledging the audience with a gentle nod. The girl rushed to his side, her face glowing with pride and emotion. "That was amazing," she said softly. "Everyone will remember this." He smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and said, "It is the music that speaks, not me." She nodded, understanding the truth of his words. In the days that followed, the custodian's story continued to inspire. Students who had never thought about pursuing music became curious and eager to learn. Teachers shared his journey as an example of dedication and humility. The girl continued to grow, realizing that life is full of hidden stories, and that every person has something valuable to offer. She had learned to look deeper, to listen carefully, and to appreciate the talents and experiences of those around her. Part 3 of the story emphasizes the custodian's deeper talent and the transformative power of music. It shows how a single person, often overlooked, can touch the lives of many through passion, dedication, and quiet strength. The girl's journey mirrors the audience's journey, moving from laughter and underestimation to respect, admiration, and understanding. The stage is now set for the next part of the story, where the custodian's past and the lessons learned become even more meaningful and impactful. The custodian had always been a quiet man, and most people knew nothing about his past. But one afternoon, he began to share his story with the girl who had first laughed at him. They were sitting near the piano, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and she could see the depth of his thoughts as he spoke. He began slowly, carefully, as if choosing each word with care. He told her that he had learned to play the piano as a child. His first lessons were given by a local teacher who recognized his natural talent and encouraged him to practice every day. He spent hours at the piano, learning the classical pieces that many considered difficult even for experienced musicians. Music became a way for him to express himself, a place where he could escape from the difficulties of life and find peace. He remembered the long evenings spent practicing, the feeling of accomplishment when he finally mastered a complex piece, and the joy of sharing music with anyone who would listen. But life had not been easy. Circumstances beyond his control had forced him to make hard choices. Family responsibilities, financial struggles, and unexpected hardships had made it impossible for him to pursue a formal career as a pianist. He had dreams of performing on stage, of teaching music, and of sharing his talent with the world, but reality had other plans. He worked various jobs, including the one that had brought him to the school as a custodian. It was not the life he had envisioned, but it allowed him to survive and continue playing in his own time. The girl listened quietly, absorbing every word. She felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for the custodian. She realized that his life had been full of challenges that few could understand, and yet he had never let go of his passion. Music had remained a constant in his life, a source of strength and comfort, even when the world seemed unfair. His story gave her a new perspective on resilience and the power of determination. He also spoke about the people who had supported him along the way. There had been teachers who encouraged him, friends who listened to his music, and family members who believed in his abilities. Their support had helped him continue playing, even when it seemed that life was closing doors everywhere else. He emphasized that these moments of encouragement, no matter how small, had made a lasting difference. The girl could see that his success in connecting with others through music was built on these experiences, on the lessons he had learned about kindness, patience, and dedication. The custodian described how he had kept his music private for many years. He had written compositions, practiced daily, and sometimes performed in small gatherings, but he had never sought recognition. Playing the piano had been a personal journey, a way to express his emotions and tell his story without words. He explained that he had never imagined that one day, his music would be appreciated by so many, and that someone who had once laughed at him would become a close friend and supporter. The girl was moved by his humility and the quiet pride in his voice. As he spoke, the girl began to understand the depth of his character. She realized that talent alone was not enough. It was perseverance, resilience, and the ability to keep going despite obstacles that defined him. She thought about her own life and the times she had taken things for granted, and she felt grateful for the lessons he was teaching her. She knew that these lessons would stay with her forever, shaping the way she viewed people, talent, and the world around her. Over the next few days, the custodian continued to share small pieces of his story with the girl and a few students who showed genuine interest. He spoke of the sacrifices he had made, the disappointments he had faced, and the moments of joy that had kept him going. Each story was accompanied by a piece of music that reflected the emotions he had felt at the time. The students listened, captivated by the combination of words and music, feeling as if they were being allowed into a world they had never known existed. The girl began to help him organize small performances where he could share his story and music with a wider audience. They worked together to plan the events, select the pieces, and prepare the students who would attend. It was a collaborative effort that strengthened their bond and allowed the custodian to reach people in a new way. The girl felt proud to be part of this process, knowing that she was helping to share something truly meaningful. During one of these events, the custodian played a composition that he had written during a particularly difficult time in his life. The music was full of emotion, conveying sadness, hope, and resilience all at once. The audience was deeply moved, many wiping away tears as they listened. The girl watched from the side, feeling a mix of pride, admiration, and humility. She knew that the custodian had given them something far more valuable than just music. He had shared a piece of his life, his struggles, and his triumphs. The custodian also spoke about the importance of recognizing hidden talents in others. He encouraged the students to look beyond appearances, to listen carefully, and to value the abilities and experiences of everyone around them. His words resonated deeply with the audience, leaving a lasting impression on their hearts and minds. The girl realized that his lessons were not just about music. They were about life, about respect, and about the power of empathy. Over time, the custodian's story became well known throughout the school community. Students and teachers alike were inspired by his journey, and many began to reflect on their own assumptions and judgments. The girl continued to grow and learn, understanding that her initial laughter had been a turning point, a moment that led to greater awareness and compassion. She felt grateful for the opportunity to know him and to be part of sharing his story. The custodian continued to move through life quietly, focusing on his music and the connections he had built. He never sought fame or recognition, but he had earned the respect and admiration of everyone who knew him. His story showed that talent, perseverance, and humility could overcome obstacles, and that the lessons learned through hardship could be shared in ways that touched the lives of others. Part 4 of the story reveals the custodian's past, showing the struggles and experiences that shaped his character and talent. It highlights the importance of resilience, humility, and empathy, and emphasizes that true success is often found in the quiet moments of perseverance. The girl's journey mirrors this growth, as she learns to value people for who they are, rather than for what she assumed them to be. This sets the stage for the final part of the story, where recognition, respect, and lasting impact come together in a meaningful conclusion. After years of quietly dedicating himself to music, the custodian finally experienced a day that felt different. The school had organized a special assembly to honor individuals whose actions and talents had inspired the community. The principal had spoken to the teachers about the custodian, emphasizing how his story and his music had touched the lives of so many students. There was a sense of excitement in the air, but also curiosity. Everyone wanted to see what made the man they had overlooked so remarkable. The girl who had first laughed at him was there early, helping to organize the auditorium and ensuring everything was ready. She had come a long way from the teasing girl who had thought of the custodian as invisible. Now she felt a sense of pride and responsibility. She had witnessed his talent, listened to his story, and helped others understand him. She had grown through this experience, learning lessons about empathy, respect, and patience. When the custodian arrived, he moved with the same quiet confidence that had always defined him. Students and teachers greeted him warmly, and the room felt alive with anticipation. He nodded politely to everyone, his calm demeanor not betraying the importance of the moment. He approached the piano on the stage, and the auditorium fell silent. The girl watched him, knowing that this was not just a performance. It was the culmination of a journey of perseverance, humility, and talent that had finally been recognized. He began to play, and the music immediately filled the room. It was a powerful, emotional piece, combining technical mastery with deep feeling. Each note seemed to carry his life story, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the quiet victories. The audience was captivated, completely absorbed by the music. Students who had once ignored him now listened with rapt attention. Teachers exchanged amazed glances, and parents leaned forward, clearly moved. The girl felt a lump in her throat, realizing that the man she had once laughed at had transformed the auditorium and everyone in it with something far more profound than she could have imagined. When the piece ended, there was a moment of silence, as if the room was catching its breath. Then, the applause began, soft at first, then growing louder and more enthusiastic. People stood up, clapping and cheering, their admiration clear in every gesture. Some students called out words of encouragement, and a few teachers wiped tears from their eyes. The girl joined in, clapping and cheering, her face glowing with pride and emotion. She could see the custodian's modest smile, the quiet acknowledgement of the recognition he had earned, and the satisfaction that came from sharing his gift with the world. After the performance, the principal stepped forward to speak. She praised the custodian for his dedication, talent, and resilience, emphasizing the lessons his story had taught the school community. She highlighted how he had shown that true talent and value are not always visible at first glance, and that perseverance and humility can inspire more than recognition or fame ever could. The audience listened intently, many nodding in agreement, feeling the truth of her words. The girl approached him afterward, her voice full of admiration and gratitude. "I'm so glad everyone can finally see what I realized that day," she said softly. "You've inspired so many of us." The custodian nodded gently, his eyes reflecting quiet humility. "It is not about being seen," he said, "but about sharing what we love and giving it meaning for others." She understood immediately. The music, the story, and the journey had become bigger than any single person. It was about connection, understanding, and the power of dedication. In the weeks that followed, the custodian continued to play, but now with a wider audience and more opportunities to share his music. The school encouraged him to teach small classes for students interested in learning piano, giving him a chance to pass on his knowledge and inspire a new generation. Students signed up eagerly, excited to learn from someone they had come to respect deeply. The girl helped organize the classes, ensuring that students understood the value of listening, patience, and practice. The custodian's story began to spread beyond the school. Parents shared it with friends, and local newspapers highlighted the remarkable journey of a man who had gone from being overlooked to becoming a source of inspiration for everyone around him. His humility remained unchanged, but the impact of his actions and his music continued to grow. The girl watched this unfold with awe, realizing that the lessons she had learned from him were now reaching even more people. One afternoon, the girl asked the custodian about his favorite moments since being recognized. He thought for a moment and then smiled quietly. "Every time someone listens carefully, without judgment, and feels something from the music, that is my favorite moment," he said. "Recognition is nice, but knowing that my music touches hearts, even in small ways, is what matters most." She nodded, understanding the depth of his perspective. It was a lesson about life as much as it was about music. that true impact comes from sincerity, dedication, and care for others. As the year went on, the custodian became an integral part of the school community. He was no longer invisible, and people sought his guidance and friendship. The girl continued to learn from him, helping to organize events, share his story, and encourage other students to pursue their passions. She reflected on how much she had grown since the day she had laughed at him. That moment, which had seemed small and humorous at the time, had become the start of a journey that changed her perspective and deepened her understanding of humanity. The custodian also continued to write and compose music. He shared his compositions with students and staff, sometimes allowing them to play or perform in small recitals. Each piece carried emotion, history, and meaning, connecting listeners to experiences beyond their own. The girl realized that his gift was not only technical skill, but also the ability to convey stories and emotions through sound. She felt privileged to witness and be part of this journey. The girl also noticed a change in the school culture. Students became more attentive to the talents of others, teachers encouraged creativity and exploration, and the community embraced the idea that every person has value and something to offer. The custodian's story had become a living example of resilience, humility, and the importance of recognizing the hidden potential in people. The lessons he had taught extended far beyond music, shaping the character and mindset of everyone who encountered him. The culmination of this story showed that true recognition is not about fame or awards, but about the connections we create and the inspiration we leave behind. The custodian's music had touched lives, opened hearts, and changed perspectives. The girl, who had begun as a teasing observer, had grown into a thoughtful, empathetic young person, shaped by the experience of seeing talent, perseverance, and humility in action. The school community, too, had learned to value people for their abilities, their stories, and the effort they put into what they loved. The final moments of Part 5 focus on a special recital. The custodian plays a piece he wrote to reflect on his journey, sharing it with students, teachers, and parents. The girl watches, her eyes filled with pride and emotion, as the music fills the auditorium. The audience listens, captivated, moved, and inspired. The custodian's life, once quiet and overlooked, now serves as a beacon of hope, demonstrating that talent, humility, and perseverance can transform not only individual lives but entire communities. In the end, the story leaves a lasting message. Everyone has hidden potential, and every life carries lessons worth sharing. The custodian's journey, from unnoticed worker to celebrated musician and mentor, teaches that respect, empathy, and dedication can create change, inspire others, and bring people together in ways that go far beyond appearances or first impressions. It is a story of growth, connection, and the enduring power of human spirit.